All right, folks, we're going to get started here tonight. The first thing I would ask is if you would come up here, because we don't bite, and most of the conversation is going to be up here, so we'll make it a little more intimate. So come up close and join the conversation, and be curious and ask lots of great questions. That'd be wonderful. So this is not church. You don't have to sit in back. You can come up front and engage in an important topic, so we appreciate it.
If you wanted to go through the speakers, you can turn that on.
All right. So thank you all for being here. It means a lot, and if you get something out of this tonight, hopefully we'd ask you to maybe share it with a neighbor or a friend, a coworker, or whatever. Let them know about it. You know, the ultimate audience for this is really parents, to be able to be aware of some of the perils out there that keep our students from success. And this has been a fascinating endeavor. I've learned a ton. I remember we're going to talk a little about vaping tonight. I remember the first time I saw anybody vaping, I thought, well, that's a nice deal. They're trying to quit smoking, and now they're vaping. That makes a lot of sense. And then you hear about people in the hospital with, you know, lungs being removed and everything else, and it's horrible. I mean, and you don't know what you're putting in your body, and you know. So you know, these are important. They really are, to have that dialogue and have that discussion. There's no such thing as a stupid question. If you're curious about anything you hear tonight and want to know more, ask, please, because we have an all-star panel of folks that really know this stuff really well. And when you're preparing these things, you only have so much time, and you sort of try to get it all in. But if you have questions, please don't be afraid to raise your hand and ask what's happening. And then if you would, again, share, let people know. The real value of this tonight is like all the other forums. We love the people that are here. They help guide the questions and keep it going, but this will live on. This is something that can be shared, and you'll find this on West Fargo Public Schools Facebook page, West Fargo Police Department Facebook page, as well as our AM 1100, the Flag page. So, and please share it, get it out there, and let people know what's there. The other forums are still up as well, and they're all very, very good. So, some really weighty, serious topics tonight, but I think you'll enjoy them all. So, my name is Scott Hennon. I do a radio talk show called What's on Your Mind. That's on every day from 8:30 to 11 on What's on Your Mind. Our radio station's paired up with the West Fargo Police Department, West Fargo Public Schools. This has been a real push from the West Fargo schools and the leadership of our next guest, and of Chief Yonke as well. And I really applaud them, because you know it's tough every day when you go to school leading North Dakota's fastest growing school, or the rising population. You deal with the West Fargo Police Department. These are two growing entities. I mean, they are in the eye of the storm, drinking from a fire hose, and you know they see the trends and where it's going, and what they're trying to do here is say, hey, let's stop, let's have a conversation, let's get parents involved in this, let's not just do this alone and pound our head against the wall. So that's why it's really important. So we're really proud to be part of this, and get the word out best we can to talk about these projects. So lots to cover tonight, so we're going to get rolling after a welcome from the superintendent of West Fargo Public Schools, Beth Schleide. Beth, come on up here. How about a hand for Beth?
Do I have a microphone on, or should I use this one?
I think you're okay with both, yeah?
With both?
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you for coming out tonight. This is our third Student Success Forum of the school year. It is our 7th Student Success Forum since I became superintendent. And to cut to the chase, why we started these forums is because as I was learning information about what our students were facing, I realized that it was my obligation and the obligation of all of our educators to inform parents about what we are hearing and what we are seeing. And so we wanted to get the word out. So thank you, starting to the West Fargo Police Department and Chief Yonke, because he immediately stepped up and said, we will help and partner. Thank you to 1100 The Flag, Scott Hennon, for hosting tonight, Dustin Moore for helping us get all set up. I want to thank Heather Lease and Don Miller. Heather is our coordinator for communication. Don Miller is our wellness coordinator. Our district now sees that we need not only counselors, not only social workers, but we need somebody that is going to put their attention into these subjects to keep our kids safe. So I want to make sure and thank them. I want to thank our board. Tonight I want to thank Jim Jonas, who is our vice president, has not missed an event that I can think of. So their support overall and his participation in helping us get the word out has been very important. Today, we received our Youth Risk Behavior Survey data, just today. This is a survey that is taken every other year, and students in grades 7 through 12 took it in the spring of 2019. The results came today. I haven't had a real opportunity to dig into them, but this is one of the reasons why we are here. When we look at our middle school students, there were 584, if I'm reading that right, it's 580 some, I don't have my glasses on, students that took this survey. And it was a random sampling of 7th and 8th graders, so not every student takes this. 18.3% of them said that they have seriously thought about killing themselves. We're talking about 7th and 8th graders. 13.2% of them went so far as to make a plan. These are our students. They're not students of the nation. These are our children. And 7.7% of them said they've attempted this suicide. That's 44 of our 7th and 8th graders have said that they have attempted suicide. And it gives me chills to think about if any of them had accomplished that task. When we look at our high schools, 18.6% in grades 9 through 12 say that they have considered it. This is just slightly below the state average. 14.5% stated that they have created a plan, which again is slightly below the state average. But we have 70 students in grade 9 through 12 that said that they have attempted suicide. This is why we're here tonight, is to set our students up for success in any way we can. And we are fortunate that we have speakers here that are going to teach us more. And what I ask of all of you is if you hear something tonight that you think someone you know, a neighbor, a cousin, a friend in Texas, might benefit from, this will be recorded so that you can share it with others. I thank you because you are here. You took the time. And so without further ado, we're going to turn it over to the next part of the program. Thank you so much.
Numbers, right? Because West Fargo's really no different than Fargo, no different than Moorhead, no different than any community you pick. Numbers are going to be somewhere in there, and these surveys have been perfected now over the years, where they're able to get a pretty good read on you know, what's true, what's real. So when you think about that, 7th and 8th graders, you have 2 out of 10 kids in 7th and 8th grade have thought about suicide. 2 out of 10. So what's that for in the average class, I guess, probably, right? Maybe even a little more. And I don't know about you, but that just knocks you over the head. You know, that's something that we've got to worry about. And tonight we're going to talk about the vaping, as I mentioned. We're going to talk about the Be Smart campaign and things like, all right, if I've got a 9th through 12th grader and there's darn near 20% considering suicide and 14% have a plan for suicide. All right, I'm a hunter and I've got guns in the house. I hope my kids aren't thinking about it, but if I am, have I got them secured? So it isn't, you know, those are the kind of things that we're going to talk about tonight, and then also, obviously, on the alcohol side as well, which can lead to a whole host of problems. So things parents need to know about their kids. Jen Bartsch is our first presenter. She is going to talk a little bit about the alcohol situation, and again, give parents some information from Drake Counseling Services. Welcome, Jen Bartsch, please.
See if I can just find my slides here. I'm sorry, could you help me find the... Sorry. Oh, well, there you go, that's why. Good? All right, so like they said, my name is Jen Bartsch. I'm a licensed addiction counselor and I work for Drake Counseling Services. I was asked to talk to you guys a little bit tonight about alcohol use in adolescents. So to start out with, we're just gonna talk about basic information about alcohol. So alcohol is a drug that's actually classified as a depressant, but a lot of people drink for the stimulant effect, having 1 or 2 drinks, and you feel more outgoing, more talkative, more energetic. But the more alcohol you consume, you start feeling more of those depressant effects like loss of control and coordination. We know that alcohol is one of the most widely abused substances among our youth, and that frequently is occurring in the form of binge drinking, which is just the practice of consuming a lot of alcohol in one period. So it's defined as 5 or more drinks for a guy and 4 or more drinks for a woman. I think to understand binge drinking a little bit better, we need to understand what does it mean to actually have one standard drink. So this is a standard drink chart for the United States, and all it's saying is if I put a 1.5 ounce shot next to a 5 ounce glass of wine, next to a 12 ounce beer, all of those are equivalent to what one standard drink means. I know adolescents that I work with, this is just really a concept that they really struggle with because they don't really think about what is one standard drink when they're taking pulls off of bottles or their friends are mixing them heavy drinks. Your blood alcohol content, your BAC, this is most commonly used as a metric of alcohol intoxication for legal or medical purposes. This chart here just kind of shows the effects of your BAC as you continue to drink. So you can see at the first point of about a 0.05, you're just in that buzz zone. And that's where you get those stimulant effects, like you're more talkative, but we know that your judgment is already starting to be impaired at this point. So going into the 0.06 to 0.11, you're hitting that drunk zone. This is also where you are legally intoxicated at a 0.08 if you get caught drinking and driving. And you guys can kind of read through what happens as you continue to have your BAC increase. It's important to understand also that BACs among men and women are different. So if a 140-pound man had like 3 drinks, his BAC is going to be around a 0.08. But a woman of the same weight and had 3 drinks, she would be at a 0.11. The reason for that is women tend to be smaller structure, they have more body fat, but men have a higher concentration of an enzyme in our system that actually breaks down alcohol faster for them. So alcohol use in our adolescents. According to the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, they said about 90% of our alcohol use consumed by our youth is in the form of binge drinking. When we surveyed our North Dakota high school students, a little under 16.5% report that they binge drank in the last 30 days. And we know that a good percent of our high school students and our young adults don't believe that binge drinking once or twice a week poses a great risk for them. And that's just kind of concerning because we're much more likely to engage in behaviors that we don't think are going to be consequential or harmful to us. But we know that there are a lot of risks for underage drinking and binge drinking. You know, one of the first one is that impairs our judgment. North Dakota DOT in 2017 reported about 49% of our fatal crashes in this state are alcohol related. When we looked at our high school students, about 6.5 report that they drove after drinking in the last 30 days, and 1 in 6, or about 16.5%, reported they got in a car with someone who was drinking and then drove in the last 30 days. This then goes into that increased risk of physical and sexual assaults. When you compare our adolescent non-drinkers to our adolescent drinkers, they're at much higher risk for occurring a physical or sexual assault. I think this also kind of just goes into that increased high-risk sexual behavior, having unprotected sex, unplanned sex, which leads to some of those secondary consequences like unplanned or unwanted pregnancies, increased risks of contracting like an STD, HIV, AIDS. A little bit about youth and crime. Alcohol-related offenses are one of the #1 unruly offenses that our juvenile court system needs to deal with in the state of North Dakota. So you look at about 32% of our referrals were made for minor in possession and minor in consumption charges. When you look at like our inmate population in the state of North Dakota, about 78% of our inmate population meets criteria for having a substance use disorder, which just says they meet criteria for saying they have a problem with drugs or alcohol. And I think that really ties back into youth and crime. I would take a strong guess that if you went back and you asked those inmates, when did you start using? When did you start having problems? The majority of them would probably tell you that that began in their youth, their adolescence, their young adulthood, that 17, 18, 19 range. Our underage drinking is costing the state about $160 million. And when you break that down, violence is about 83, traffic crashes about 40, injuries 7, and treatments costing the state about 4.6 million. A little bit moving into adolescence and the brain. Thinking or drinking, what will it be for your kid? So this is just an MRI showing the brain activity of a 15-year-old non-drinker compared to the brain activity of a 15-year-old heavy drinker. And you can see the brain activity of a non-drinker lights up a lot more compared to that heavy drinker. Our brain actually doesn't even stop fully developing until you're about 25 years of age. And the last part of your brain to fully develop is your prefrontal cortex, which is the front part of your brain. So it's a really important part of your brain that deals with like impulse control, judgment, making good decisions. And so you can see on here, like at 9, not so strongly developed, but as it continues to get older, that prefrontal cortex gets a lot more developed. So the concerning part is that when adolescents introduce alcohol or drugs into their system, they're actually either altering or changing that development potentially. So we know that short-term or moderate drinking really impairs learning and memory far more in our youth than in our adults. And our youth only needs to drink about half the amount an adult does to have the same negative effects. Brain development in adolescents, when I work with them, I just really try to inform them, like, you're damaging your brain. When you're introducing drugs and alcohol at this age, you're actually putting the chance that your brain is going to be hijacked, that you're going to have a higher risk for developing a substance use disorder and having problems long term. When you just look at drinking, research shows that drinking before 15 years of age results in you being 4 times more likely to have a problem with alcohol long term compared to those who wait until they're 21. When you look at North Dakota statistics, we know that about 92% of the adults in North Dakota are reporting that they think underage drinking is problematic in this state. When we look at the students, about 19.2% of middle school students report using alcohol in their lifetime. 29% of high school students report current alcohol use within the last 30 days. And again, that just under 16.5% report the binge drinking within the last 30 days. The good news is these numbers are dropping compared to prior years the survey was done. In 2003, about 40% of our students reported they were binge drinking in the last 30 days. So that's a good decrease. But to put in perspective what about 16.4% of our students are, that's about a little over 5,000 students. So if you took Bismarck High School, Grand Forks Century, Fargo South, Dickinson, and Williston, and you put all those students in one room, that's the amount of students that are telling you they went out and got drunk in the last 30 days. We know that about 2.8% of our youth in the state already meet criteria for having an alcohol use disorder, which again just means that they meet criteria saying they have a problem with drinking. So how did our state get here with the problem with underage drinking? That low perceived risk, when 70% of our high school students and 70% of our young adults are saying, I don't think binge drinking 1 or 2 times a week is going to hurt me, we are definitely more likely again to engage in things we don't think are going to cause us harm. That age of early first use, 14.5% of our students are reporting before they were 13 years of age they had their first drink. And accessibility. If it's easier to use or easier to obtain, we're more likely to use it. So we know that about a little over 40% of adults don't think it's difficult for their adolescent to have an adult buy them liquor. And about 60% are reporting they don't think it's difficult for their adolescent to either sneak liquor out of their house or to get it from their peers. Interestingly enough, North Dakota, it ranks highest for number of bars per capita. So for our state, we have about 1 bar for about every 1,800 people. And you compare that to a state like Virginia, they have 1 bar for every 64,000 people. So we kind of have this culture in North Dakota that drinking is acceptable. And 20% of our North Dakota adults reported that they perceive underage drinking as acceptable behavior. So these are warning signs for parents to kind of look out for, that maybe your adolescent is struggling with substance use. The first one is just those physical cues. You want to look for changes in eating habits, weight gain or weight loss, changes in their sleeping pattern. You know, clearly if you're smelling alcohol in their breath, they're having slurred speech or coordination problems. You want to look for excessive sweating, tremors, or shakes. The second one is those emotional changes. If they're losing interest in family or friends, they're losing interest in things they used to enjoy, hobbies, activities, they're becoming overly secretive or isolative. Chronic dishonesty, if you're catching your kid lying to you a lot, that's usually a sign that something is going on. Noticing a lack of motivation, energy, maybe their self-esteem is changing, and just that moodiness or irritability. Change of patterns in school. So school tends to be one of the first places problems show up. So maybe that's just a change in grades. Maybe your kid was like an AB student, now they're C's, D's, or they're having to withdraw from classes. Maybe they're continually showing up late for class, missing periods, missing days. You're getting contacted by the school and they're reporting things like, I don't know, their behaviors seem different, they're sleeping in class, they don't have the same quality of work, or they don't seem motivated. Those are usually signs that something's going on with your kid. Dramatic changes in friendships. So usually one or two things happen. New friends enter, old friends leave. Or they have two groups of friends. They're using friends and they're non-using friends. And you tend not to get to know their new friends very well because those friends don't really want to show up and introduce themselves if they're into substance use. Finding alcohol among their possessions, looking for lies like, that's not my alcohol, that's my friend's alcohol. You know, peer pressure among adolescents isn't always that really aggressive peer pressure where they're like, drink or use with me or you're not going to be my friend. It's more just setting that environment up for them to experiment. So if they're running with kids that are drinking or using, they're more likely to experiment with alcohol and drug use because that's what's around them. And then social media. Know what social media your kids are on, what social media they're using, what they're posting. That's usually a good way to find out information about what your adolescent is up to. Uncharacteristic changes in mood or personality. Talk just a little bit about addiction and mental health. Co-occurring disorders is really common among adolescents. So co-occurring just means they have a mental health disorder and a substance use disorder. It's really difficult sometimes to know what came first or what's really going on because signs of a mental health disorder can look like a chemical dependency problem or vice versa. So if you're just not really sure, is my kid struggling with depression or anxiety or ADHD, or are they abusing drugs or alcohol, start seeking out some mental health professionals, go to your pediatrician, seek out a counseling agency. They're usually able to help you run some assessments or answer your questions to help clarify some of that. And then the deterioration in appearance. When we're not taking care of ourselves because we're drinking or using, we have poor self-care, poor eating or sleeping habits. That really can take a toll in how we look and how much we really care about how much we look. So it's not one of these symptoms happening once, okay? It's not like we have one bad week of school and my kid is using drugs or alcohol. It's usually a combination of these things happening over a period of time. So what for parents to do? We really know that early detection is really important for an adolescent. The earlier you can catch a problem happening, the better chance that you can get the services and the help that they need, and the better chance they're going to be successful in those services. So look for the signs. If you notice these signs happening in your adolescent, don't ignore them. Don't hope they're going to grow out of it. Don't hope it's just going to go away. Have the conversation with your kids. What's your concern about? What you're seeing. Set those clear limits and expectations. Make sure they understand what you will and will not tolerate in your home in regards to substance use and what will happen if you catch your kid using. Getting other people involved and getting educated. There are tons of resources in this community. You know, your school has a ton of resources, whether that's your SRO, your administrator, your counselors, your teachers, your family practice doctor, your pediatrician. There's tons of counseling agencies that are available to answer questions. I know at Drake we do like free pre-screens. If a parent has concerns and they want to talk about it, you can come in and you can talk to addiction counselor and ask the questions you have, and they can help give you some direction on where maybe to go from there. Family involvement matters. Again, just parents being involved in their adolescent's life makes a huge difference in the success of your kid. So continuing to have the conversation with your adolescent about drugs and alcohol, being aware of what you have available in your home, like what alcohol they have access to, what prescription meds maybe they have access to. And then also I think it's just important to get to know your kids as friends. You know, they play a huge role in what your kid does at this age, is who they run with. So that's all I have for you guys.
One thing I wanted to just throw in on this topic of the alcohol thing. So I think I'm one of the oldest in the room. And so I graduated in 1983. And I remember, your graduation party and everything, and parents kind of having things and stuff. And my parents bought a keg and bought it over there. And I mean, every graduation party you went to, there was a keg. Now, I thought nothing of it at the time, honestly. I didn't. But now I look back and think, I wouldn't on a bet bring a keg to a graduation party, during the kids losing. And most of the, my classmates were the one that were at the keg. I think that that's one probably downfall of our culture a little bit, that we just say, kids are going to do that. You watch that and say, kids are going to do that. Do I want my kid to have that brain scan? With less brain activity? No way. But, that information is not top of mind. It's not in the newspaper. It's not on the radio. It's not there in front of us. But that's why these forums are wonderful. So appreciate that very much. Good talk. All right, now we have two folks that are going to come up here and talk a little bit about another topic that is important. And as I mentioned earlier, it's the SMART. And I say SMART because the SMART campaign, because there's a lot of things in here that just make basic common sense. And so Shaina Eagleson and Dr. Chris Tiongson are coming up and going to give us a little presentation on the V-SMART campaign. So listen close. Come on up. That's so they can hear you here. So you kind of need both.
Thank you for joining us here today. Today we'll be talking about Be Smart, a program developed by Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America to bring together parents and all adults concerned about kids, guns, and safety. My name is Shaina. I'm a mom of 2 kids that go to Legacy Elementary, and I'm a chemistry teacher at Cheyenne High School.
And I'm Chris. I'm a pediatrician and a pediatric hospitalist, so that means now in my practice I take care of kids in the hospital. And not a week goes by that I don't see a kid and have to take care of them after a suicide attempt. So this stuff is really scary to me, and if there's anything we can do to make it better, that's why I'm here. Luckily, my 2 kids have graduated from high school already at Davies. So it is a real problem, and I don't know if numbers make it better or not. Make it easier to understand, but nearly 1,500 American kids under age 18 die every year as a result of a gun. That's 4 kids a day. And in fact, it's the 2nd leading cause of death for children. And if you happen to be African American, it's the #1 leading cause of death for children. And when kids are killed with guns, most of them are homicides, actually. Luckily, I don't feel like that's as much of a problem where we live, but certainly nationally, 53% of the kids who die from firearms, it's a homicide. That's 800 kids a year. And additionally, 600 die per year by suicide. And 100 kids die unintentionally, where they find the gun, like a younger kid, and it accidentally goes off and that child dies.
We know that approximately 4.6 million US children live in a household with at least one loaded, unlocked gun. While school shootings and mass shootings typically make national headlines, the reality is that for children under the age of 13, gun homicides most frequently occur in the home. And one study showed that nearly 90% of unintentional shooting deaths and injuries among children under the age of 15 occur in the home. What's more, we know that in incidents of gunfire on school grounds, 78% of shooters under the age of 18 obtain the gun from their home or the homes of relatives and friends. I know this is an emotional issue, and we may come from different walks of life. Many of you may be parents, some are gun owners, and some are not. You may have had a personal experience with guns, and some of you may have been impacted by gun violence. We believe that gun owners want to be responsible for gun owners. So we are here today to talk about what all of us, gun owners and non-gun owners alike, can do to make sure children don't have unsupervised access to guns.
And for me, it can be a little bit of a difficult topic to bring up, because of the whole politics part of it, but that's not really what this is about at all. The idea, just like I would talk about bike helmets and car seats and child-proofing medication bottles, the same thing I feel like I need to say about making sure that when we have guns at home that there is a safer way to do that. Because there are really three things that we all agree on, right? We want our kids to grow up happy and healthy. Everyone has a right to decide how they want to protect themselves, their home, their family, community, whether that means having a gun or not, or whether you enjoy hunting or shooting. And if we can do something to prevent even one child's gun death or injury, then I think we should do that.
I want to take a few minutes to talk specifically about what the consequences of unsecured guns looks like. On this slide, you'll see just a few headlines from stories across the country, although we know there are many incidents that go unreported. On the top left, you may remember from the news the first story. In January of 2018, there was a school shooting in Kentucky at Marshall County High School. At least 16 people were shot, wounded. 2 of them, Bailey Holt and Preston Cope, were killed. The 16-year-old shooter had gained access to his stepfather's unsecured pistol from his bedroom. The next tragedy took place in May of 2018. A 4-year-old boy from Louisa, Virginia, unintentionally shot his 2-year-old brother Tyson after accessing an unsecured gun that was kept high in an upper cabinet. The next headline on the bottom left illustrates that when kids are looking to carry guns out of fear, easy access to guns can help facilitate the cycle of violence. Like 17-year-old King Zeke of Jackson, Mississippi, who told the Jackson Free Press that some young people in his community carry guns out of fear of being robbed or shot, and believe that having a gun will allow them to defend themselves. Let me also point out our final story about 13-year-old Mikey from Brewster, New York. Mikey was a friendly, popular 8th grader. He was an expert bowler, an avid athlete, and he loved video games. In January 2013, Mikey came home from school and took one of his father's unlocked, loaded guns and shot himself. His family knew Mikey to be a happy kid, and they don't believe he had planned to die that day. But with easy access to a loaded gun, Mikey made an impulsive decision that tragically became a fatal one. All 4 of these stories show the fallout of when young people get their hands on unsecured guns. No story is quite the same, but all are tragic and irreversible and preventable.
So it's important to remember that even if you are practicing safe storage of your gun at home, you do need to consider, what's the situation in other homes that either your kids go play at or have a sleepover, or that you're visiting. So that's where the Be Smart program comes in. So what can we do? We can be smart. So we'll start with S, and S stands for Secure Your Guns in Homes and Vehicles. So 13 million households with kids have at least one gun. And most of the kids in those gun-owning households know exactly where the gun is stored. And as we already know, incidents of gunfire on school grounds, often, the majority of the time, the shooters obtain their gun from a home of a relative or a friend. like the tragedy that unfolded in Kentucky at Marshall County High School. So what do we mean by securing guns? That means the guns should be stored locked and unloaded, and the ammunition in a separate spot. You know, just like you wouldn't leave your car running with the keys in it, and the only thing your child had to do is quick pop it into gear before they would go driving out into the street. You need to, you know, it makes sense to take that one extra step. And hiding a gun doesn't really count either. Kids always know where they're at. There have been several studies where they ask kids of gun-owning families, the parents don't even think the kid knows there is a gun, but most of the time the child knows exactly where it is. And in fact, they've probably even touched the gun. And then remember Zeke from Mississippi. So the kid who felt afraid and felt like the gun would help protect him. So there's a lot of different reasons for kids to have access to guns, whether it's curiosity, fascination, fear. And as the adults, it's our responsibility to prevent easy access to guns. Responsible storage is associated with decrease in firearm suicide and unintentional firearm injury among kids too. 78% lower risk of self-inflicted firearm injuries if you secure your guns, and 85% lower risk of unintentional firearm injuries. Commonly used things are going to be a cable lock, a lockbox, a safe, as well as storing your firearms unloaded and ammunition separately. Unsecured guns are also often stolen, and in fact, 380,000 guns are stolen from private gun owners every year. And gun owners are three times more likely to have a gun stolen if they've been carrying their gun within the last month. I guess that would just be because it's more accessible to them. And then a quarter of all guns that are stolen are from cars. So just putting a gun in a glove box or underneath the car seat is certainly not enough.
M, model responsible behavior. Every law-abiding adult has the right to decide whether or not to have a gun in the home, but you can't rely on curious kids not to find a gun. As we saw on the slide before, one study showed that a majority of children are aware of where their parents store their guns, and that more than 1/3 reported handling their parents' guns, many doing so without the knowledge of their parents. Nearly a quarter of parents did not know that their children had handled the gun in their house. It is always an adult's responsibility to prevent unauthorized access to guns, not a curious child's responsibility to avoid guns. Talk to your kids about gun safety, but remember that's a precaution, not a guarantee. One study found that young children who go through a week-long gun safety training are just as likely as children with no training to approach or play with a handgun when they find one. Modeling responsible behavior means that smart adults make sure that kids don't have the opportunity to access guns. That said, you can't control the environment that your children is in all the time. So you should teach them that not to touch a gun if they come across one real or pretend, and give them the tools to get out of a dangerous situation and to alert an adult. As an adult, it's your responsibility to do everything you can to prevent them from getting in a dangerous situation to begin with. We also have a handout on best practices for talking to your children about children and teens about guns. As we mentioned, there are approximately 4.6 million US children living in a household with at least one loaded, unlocked gun. That's why you need to ask about firearms in other homes your child visits, the A in SMART. For the parents and caretakers in the room, what are some things you ask about before allowing your children to go to a friend's house? This is for you to tell me. What do you ask? What do you ask other parents?
Do you have pets?
If you have pets, especially if your children has allergies to pets. Trampoline.
That's
Don't want to get them hurt.
Good one.
Some other things you might ask would be pools on the property, car seats for rides, screen time, alcohol access, asking about guns. Asking about guns in the home should be as natural as asking about any other safety issue. But it can seem awkward at first. I know, I have done it. So try making it a part of your general safety conversation. You might want to try asking via email or text if you're uncomfortable at first.
R. So let's talk about recognizing the role of guns in suicide. That's the R. access to a gun can make the difference between life and death. And as we know from our statistics, this is not an uncommon thing that our children are going to be at risk. So as kids get older, though, the things that you may do to put in place for a young child, like a 3-year-old, maybe not exactly the same thing that you need to do for a 13 or a 15-year-old. So you may need to think about upping that maybe from a cable lock to a gun safe. And if you are in a situation where you're worried about someone in your home potentially being a risk of harming themselves, then that might be a good time to get that gun out of the house. So you can take it either to a friend or family member, and then making sure that you lock it and keep your ammunition separate then, so that they're not at risk from that situation either. Or you can take it to law enforcement or gun dealers or other places like that are potentially available. So when kids do attempt suicide, most of the time they don't die. Those are the kids that I see. Probably about 95% of the kids who try to commit suicide by usually pills, we can save them. But if they use a gun, 85% of the time they're dead and they don't come to see me. We want more second chances for our kiddos. It can be very much of an impulsive decision, like our story of Mikey, where it just seemed like it came out of nowhere. And giving them enough time and space between the thoughts of self-harm and removing the means from them can really make a big difference. So the National Youth Study conducted by CDC showed that 17% of high school students surveyed had seriously considered attempting suicide within the last year. In another study, 41% of adolescents in gun-owning households reported having easy access to the guns in their home. So responsible firearm storage is associated with a decrease in the risk of child firearm suicide. We also have other handouts and materials about what to do if you are recognizing some warning signs, including the suicide prevention hotline and other options in the back.
Tell. That is the power of being smart. We have heard from people that because of the Be Smart program, they know to ask about the presence of guns before their children go to other people's homes, that they have talked to family members about guns in the homes when they have recognized roles of guns in suicide, and that gun owners are modeling responsible behavior as a direct result of Be Smart. So who are you going to tell to be smart today? Research shows that law enforcement, the military, and hunting or outdoor groups are particularly effective at communicating safe storage practices.
So here's our acronym again. So the S is for secure your firearms and guns and your guns in homes and vehicles. Model responsible behavior as the adult. Ask about unsecured guns in other homes. Recognize the role of guns in suicide and tell your peers to be smart. You know, one of the other the most scary thing, I think, is of kids who have survived a suicide attempt by gun. They ask them later, how long did you think about it before you pulled the trigger? And it's 10 minutes. That's it, 10 minutes for half of those kids. So again, we need to put some time and space between that impulsive, dangerous decision and an irretrievable outcome.
Thank you for spending your time here today. Feel free to speak to any of us if you have questions after the presentation. Also, if you are interested in becoming involved, I have a sign-in sheet in the back if you'd like to give us your information, and we have extra reading materials as well as a few free gun locks if you would like.
All right, thank you very much, Shaina and Dr. Chris, for your contribution to
I'll try.
this discussion. Young brain on how it can be done, so appreciate that. And as they mentioned, a number of materials in the back, so make sure you check those out as well and get some more information. Okay, Next is the vaping presentation. And again, this one an eye-opener as well. When this is over, then we're going to bring all of these presenters back and answer any questions you have. So just keep track if you have any questions, and we'll ask those all in detail at the end. We're joined by Fargo Public Health's Melissa Markegard. She's going to open our eyes on vaping and where this is at. And this is, I mean, the numbers on this are just astounding on how much every day this is growing and the debates over it. So that's why it's really extraordinarily important to know what's going on. My daughter told me a story about a thing that was going around school, and a father suspected that a child was doing some vaping, and he denied it all along, and then one day he's pulling something out of his pocket and something flies across the floor, but it was like a key fob or something. It looked like. Don't tell him. Well, yeah. These can be disguised too. So that's the other thing. They don't always look like what you think vaping looks like. So I won't steal any more of Melissa's thunder. Give her a hand,
Yeah.
Melissa Markegard.
Thank you.
That one you need to hold too.
No, I don't. I'm gonna
got
use the
both.
lapel,
Okay,
so I'm
sounds
good. I think.
All right.
Okay. Whoop. There we go. Okay, so I messed up today and I said, hey, here's my new PowerPoint, use this, and it's actually the student version. So I'm gonna skip several slides because in the student version I talk about tobacco, I talk about cigarettes, I talk about chewing tobacco, and then I launch into vaping. So I am here tonight to talk about vaping, so I'm skipping some slides. But we're gonna talk about being misinformed about the dangers of vaping. So tonight we're gonna talk about the evolution. No, we're not talking about the evolution. If you were students, we would be talking about the evolution of tobacco, but we're gonna talk about nicotine addiction, we're gonna talk about marketing tactics, and we're gonna talk about what you guys should be looking for as parents, and what might already be under your nose that you don't realize is there, okay? So, the vapes. Okay, so what are they being called today? They are being called ENDS, or the electronic nicotine delivery system. How many of you have heard a student say that? That is legal stuff. That is government stuff. That's what's in policy and law, because big tobacco continues to create brand new products every single day that try, not according to them, but technically they try to circumvent the law that is already in place. And so by calling them electronic nicotine delivery systems, the hope is that whatever big tobacco throws at us, especially in the tobacco prevention world, we have already got it covered in our current laws. What you will hear students call them are vapes, jewels. You won't hear them called e-cigarettes anymore. We're actually in the process of changing that all on our website, because you don't hear students or youth or even young adults call them e-cigarettes. They actually make fun of that. They don't want anything to do with the cigarette negative connotation. So you'll hear vapes, you'll hear jewels, you'll hear specific products that they're using, and you might hear it and you might say, well, that doesn't sound like anything too terrible. But for example, the newest thing is a puff bar. I'll show you it later, but a puff bar doesn't sound that bad. It doesn't smell that bad. And so there's lots of different things that you need to be looking for, and even down to what they're being called changes on a continuous basis. So come to my presentation in 2 months and we'll be talking about what they're being called, and it'll be different. So every vape is made up of 4 main chemicals: propylene glycol, glycerin, nicotine, and flavorings. Right now there are over 15,000 flavors on the market. Propylene glycol is a food additive that is used to keep things moist, used to keep food moist. So what you will hear the vape industry or big tobacco industry talk about is the fact that propylene glycol, vegetable glycerin, nicotine flavoring, those are all approved for human consumption. Yes, I'm not saying they're not. You can consume them, but consuming them means it goes through your digestive system. They are not approved for human inhalation. Specifically, they are not approved to mix those 4 things together, heat them up in a vape, have them aerosolized, inhale them into our lungs. That is what, we don't know what that actually does when you inhale all that into your lungs. What we're finding is that you are inhaling a nanoparticle. So when the particles are aerosolized, they become a nanoparticle, which is so small, they're getting very, very deep into your lungs. So if you think about a cigarette smoke, when you inhale that into your lungs, it's a real big fat particle that has to be absorbed into a blood cell or into cells in order for it to affect the body. So these nanoparticles, they don't have to wait to be absorbed. Simple biology, they don't have to wait because they are so small, they just cross cell membranes. Okay? That is what we're dealing with. That is what we don't know what the long-term health effects are of. That is why we need to be very, very cautious about who's using them, why they're using them, etc. So how does the tobacco industry target youth? See, this is the kid version, so it says you. So we're just going to call it youth. How do they target youth? They target them with product placement, specifically on counters or near things that are seen as safe to kids. They target them with flavors and designs. So adults in the room, adults in the room, what are some popular flavors of vapes that you have heard of that you think really kids would like? Shout some out. Have you heard of any? What flavors do you think? Watermelon, okay. Cotton candy. Cotton candy is always said by parents, always said by parents. Any other guesses? Any other thoughts? Because I'm so glad I have youth in the room. Okay, so youth, I'm going to ask some youth. And if you get my answer correct, it doesn't mean that I think you vape. I think you guys are extremely aware of what's going on, and it is so popular in your not necessarily your circles, but in your age group, okay? So I wouldn't be shocked if you get the answer, if you guess what I'm hoping you guess, okay? What are some popular flavors that you guys have heard of? Mango and mint. Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're here tonight. Okay, so parents, did you ever think to guess mango and mint? No. Why did you say mango and mint? Because you already heard me. Woohoo! You already heard me present. Okay, so yeah, so mango. Okay, so it's not technically, okay, that's not how I wanted it to look, but yes.
It smells like an air freshener.
Yes, they do, yes. But mango and mint are popular because, I'll say it because we're Facebook Live, so it needs to be on microphone, but they already know. Mango and mint are the number 1 and 2 selling Juul pods up until whenever, now that Juul can't make those flavors right now. Mango and mint are the most popular flavors of Juul pods that exist, okay? In every classroom that I have been in this fall and early and into winter, I ask the same question, I get the same answers, okay? In every parent or adult presentation that I give, I ask the same question and I get the same answers. Cupcake, cotton candy, watermelon, like a normal fruit flavor, strawberry. No one ever guesses mango because there has been very specific targeting to youth. Every youth class in the top 4 says mango and mint, okay? That should cause you to say, what in the world is going on here? Why would all of the students know that? And I present typically to 7th and 9th graders. So we're not even talking about seniors in high school, we're talking about pretty young kids. They also target youth with advertising and packaging. What does it look like she's advertising? I mean, pretend you can't see that it says smoking evolved on it. What does that look like an ad for? makeup, clothes. Okay, how old does it look? How old does she look? She look like a teenager, young adult? Okay. This is one of the very first Juul ads that was ever out on, that was part of a Juul promo. It was one of the very first ones. All of them looked like this. They all had very young looking people having fun in neon colors. All of them said smoking evolved, but I have sat in a room with someone who worked for Juul or was working for Juul at the time, who got up and said to everyone, Juul does not advertise to kids. I beg to differ, but of course I work for public health, so I am going to say that I do not agree with that, okay? They very much target youth in very specific ways. And then we move on to video games, movies, TV, and social media. And I really want to talk about social media with you as parents, okay? I also ask the students when I come in and present, how many of you have an Instagram or a Snapchat account? So, how many of you have an Instagram or Snapchat account? Okay, keep your hands raised if you have an Instagram or Snapchat account. How many of you, keep your hands raised, have ever seen someone on their Instagram or Snapchat or the stories sell a vape, use a vape, sell a Juul, or use a Juul? How many of you have seen that? Okay. The kids of the room have their hands up. The adults in the room have lowered their hands. Okay. Juul specifically took down their Instagram, made a huge deal about it in the media. We do not target youth, so we will take down our social media, we'll take down our Facebook. Youth aren't on Facebook, by the way, but they took down their Facebook, they took down their Instagram. The bottom line is they don't need to have their Instagram account anymore because youth are hashtagging Juul at an astronomical rate, okay? Youth are showing how cool Juul is to use simply on their story, okay? They free advertise for vape companies constantly, all the time, okay? And big tobacco and the vaping industry knows that, and so they use it to their advantage. So this is the full Juul ad, how it looked. They even showed the device. Big tobacco, some of you are wondering, how in the world can they do this? Because big tobacco can't advertise like this. Correct. Cigarettes and chewing tobacco were part of a lawsuit of the 4 main big tobacco companies several years ago. And what came out of that was called the Master Settlement Agreement. And in the Master Settlement Agreement, they can no longer advertise, cigarettes and chewing tobacco can no longer advertise the way they used to. So you won't see Joe Camel as a cartoon. You won't see certain things that you used to see. You won't see a cigarette in an ad like this, okay? The vaping industry had not started yet when we had the Master Settlement Agreement. And so the vaping industry can do whatever they want. I do also want to point out that every big tobacco company owns at least one e-cigarette or vaping device, okay? Big tobacco knows what they can and can't do, and now they have products that they can kind of repeat history. Not kind of repeat history, they are repeating history with these products, okay? This is the Puff Bar. This is not brand new to youth. They are brand new to our school resource officers. They are brand new to parents. The Puff Bar is very similar to a Juul, and I'll talk more about it when I talk about all of the products that I have over there. But I do want to point out that as tobacco products, when you think about that outer circle of things, this is what you think of when you think about tobacco products. So traditional cigarettes, snus and smokeless tobacco and cigars and flavored cigars. But then you also have all the vapes, okay? They're all considered tobacco products, all of it, okay? So nicotine poisoning, so Jen was talking a lot about how your brain is developing until age 25, which makes youth more susceptible to every drug, okay? Nicotine is a drug. when youth start using nicotine at a young age, especially these new products that have extremely high nicotine content in them, that nicotine is changing our youth's brain so quickly and so rapidly. And teachers and school resource officers and parents are seeing what Jen was talking about earlier, that change in that prefrontal cortex, that part responsible for decision making and mood and impulse control. We are seeing that not only with alcohol, not only with other substances, we are seeing it with nicotine, okay? And it's becoming very obvious that nicotine has the same effects as every other drug. I also want to talk about nicotine poisoning as far as NICSIC goes. So how many of you have heard the term NICSIC? Some youth, one parent. Okay, so NICSIC is actually nicotine poisoning, okay? But youth use the term NICSIC. This is actually the definition, I got it from Urban Dictionary, okay? So we know it's the youth that have kind of created the term NICSIC. So NICSIC is nicotine poisoning. So if you hear kids, you might not hear your kids say it, but maybe you'll overhear them talking about it or see it in a message or something. I was so NICSIC over the weekend. That is nicotine poisoning that they were experiencing. And whether they realized that they were actually experiencing nicotine poisoning or not they might not actually realize that it's NICSIC is nicotine poisoning, but it is. And I like to point out the last sentence in the actual Urban Dictionary definition. This may make you want to quit juuling. So they actually specifically talk about a specific product, okay? This may make you want to quit juuling, but you'll probably just do it again tomorrow. What is that? It's in Urban Dictionary. That is what? What is that sentence? Addiction, okay? So nicotine poisoning, you experience all these terrible symptoms, but you are so addicted that you will just use it again tomorrow, okay? And that's where we're at with our youth at the moment, is complete nicotine addiction. They might want to quit, but they can't. That's where we're at. That's how bad this nicotine poisoning, or this nicotine content, these products, this current usage that we're seeing, that's how bad it is right now. So flavors in menthol. So flavors are technically a lung irritant. Menthol is added to many tobacco products to make that nicotine hit a lot easier. Menthol and mint send a signal to your brain to inhale deeper, encouraging you to inhale deeper. And 81% of youth who have ever used a tobacco product have used a flavored product. Okay, so this is a picture of a whole bunch of puff bars. Look at all those flavors. 19 of them at this particular store. Okay, 19 flavors of one product. I don't even think if I walk into a drugstore that there are 19 flavors of gum, okay? And this was just one product at this particular store. And then I want to point out this. So I was doing a presentation on an evening one night, and the gentleman was coming to my presentation, and he was vaping out in the parking lot, and I saw him through the window. And when he came in, I said, "What are you vaping?" Because I'm going to ask you what you're vaping. If you're coming to my presentation and I can see you vaping in the parking lot, I'm going to ask you. So I asked him, "What are you vaping?" And he took this bottle out. And you can't really read it, but it says neon green slushy. Okay, neon green slushy, what flavor is that? Any guesses? Green apple, that's a good guess. It's not right, but that's a good guess. That's what everybody guesses. Green apple or what? Lime? No. It's menthol. What did you guess? Antifreeze. Yeah, right, antifreeze, exactly. It's actually menthol, okay? So this was a young adult. He's using it legally. But the point is, neon green slushy doesn't sound like menthol flavor, but that's what it was, okay? And he said, "It's my favorite. I almost only exclusively use menthol flavor." Interesting. Okay, so Juul and big tobacco. So I tend to talk a lot about Juul because Juul really, I see Juul as what really launched vaping products. It changed the name to vaping. It made the move from big products to really discrete products. Okay, so Juul, I have a huge problem with. So Altria is the big tobacco company that owns Marlboro cigarettes. About a year and a half ago, Altria purchased a 35% stake in Juul for $13 billion. Okay, why would a big tobacco company want to purchase a company like Juul for billions of dollars? I'll just tell you. It's because of money. Okay, but our youth, here in North Dakota, our youth high school smoking rate is at 8%. That YRBS data came out this fall for the state. 8%. Tobacco prevention coordinators rejoiced. No, we didn't, because the e-cigarette or the vaping numbers jumped to 33%. So we finally were under in single digit percentages for smoking in high schools, and the vaping jumped to 33%. We have a huge problem, and big tobacco knows it, and so they need in on it, and they need in on it bad. Okay, so they paid billions of dollars to get in on it. Okay, 72% of the total e-cigarette market is controlled by Juul, and that was last December, or that was over a year ago, just a little over a year ago, of that percentage. I would guess that it's still fairly high. Juul is extremely popular. We see when a different product comes out, we see that one spike a little bit and Juul come down, and then Juul just climbs right back up. In the UK, they're still allowed to use the really descriptive flavors of Juul. Here in the US, they don't use, they have changed their flavor names to be not quite as descriptive. One Juul pod contains at least as much nicotine as a pack of cigarettes. Okay, it pains me to have that on my slide, because this is what Juul says on their website. I have to put what Juul says on their website. Okay, that's what they report. That's how much nicotine they report. Science is starting to show us, because of course science is looking at these things, and it's starting to show us that a Juul pod contains between 26 and 39 cigarettes worth of nicotine. Well, if you're not a smoker, you might not know that there's 20 cigarettes in a pack. Okay, so if we're talking about 26 to 39 cigarettes worth of nicotine, we're talking about almost 2 packs worth of nicotine in one Juul pod. Some students, when you ask them how many Juul pods do you use in a day, some don't know, because they are constantly sharing. Some will say, I use 1, or I use 2, or I use 3. It's insane, the amount of nicotine that some of these students are getting. And it's no wonder that we are seeing some of those behavioral changes pretty rapidly when we start asking them their usage. Juul pods always contain nicotine as they're manufactured. If they come from Juul, they have nicotine in them. Juul produces 60 million pods a month. Those 60 million pods, they turn into hazardous waste into our environment. Nicotine is a poison, okay? It doesn't matter if the pod is empty, it's still considered hazardous waste because it was holding a poison at one point, okay? And Juul admits they don't know what the long-term health effects might be. The CEO got on CNBC and talked about how they didn't know what the long-term health effects are. We're really sorry we addicted all your kids. We didn't mean to. And then most e-cigarettes are going to be on the market without any FDA oversight until 2020. Here we are. We're going to start seeing something, I think, this year, but FDA really moves slow because FDA is federal, okay? So it moves quite slow. So safety concerns with any vape, poisoning, addiction, lung injury, explosions, labeling, everything's unregulated at this time. Things are inaccurate. And so if you have maybe you have a student who says, yes, I vape, mom, I vape, but I only vape 0 milligram nicotine. NDSU, of all places, Go Bison, has done 2 studies now showing that even if there are jars of, or like bottles of vape juice that say 0 milligrams of nicotine, many of them have measurable amounts of nicotine in them. Why? Because they're not regulated and no one's checking them. Okay, they can say whatever they want. Cigarettes are regulated. Okay, 1 cigarette, 1 milligram of nicotine, approximately. Okay. And in the news, so we have some vaping-related lung injuries in the news recently, starting this past fall. As of January 21st, we have seen 2,711 cases and 60 deaths confirmed in 27 states. The CDC updates their website every Thursday with the new cases. These cases, it looks like it's slowed down. The cases that the CDC is reporting right now are only hospitalizations and deaths. So initially, when the numbers went up pretty fast, they were reporting everything. Now it's just hospitalizations that is going into this number. So it looks like it slowed down, but I don't know that it necessarily has. Plus, we are in the middle of influenza season, and influenza looks a lot like vaping-related lung injury, because vaping-related lung injury doesn't look like a lung injury. So when I go in and I talk to the 7th and 9th graders, I talk about if you come down with some of these symptoms and your mom or dad thinks that you have influenza and they bring you in, you need to disclose to your doctor that you vape, if you vape, because it's very important. Most cases with this lung injury have reported using THC-containing products. Not all of these cases have reported using THC. Many of the cases have just reported using nicotine. And then the CDC says there are no safe tobacco products. All tobacco products contain risk. So you should always know that if you're going to use a tobacco product, there is always risk involved. And then Tobacco 21, that happened in December. So just a little over a month ago, the federal government passed it. President Trump signed it into law on December 20th, 2019, and raised the legal age to purchase tobacco to 21. Okay, so all products, including vapes and e-cigarettes, everything, you need to be 21 in order to purchase those. So, and that was federal. Now it will be moved down to local level. So we'll have to update our city ordinances in order for, the law is effective now. So stores, convenience stores, standalone shops should not be selling to anyone under the age of 21. But it's at the federal level right now. There is a program through North Dakota Department of Health. We have a pilot. North Dakota is one of the pilot states for this program. It's called My Life, My Quit. It's a texting quit line. And so teens just have to text Start My Quit to that number. It's free, it's confidential, it's only for teenagers. And we are one of the pilot states. I think there's like 6 or 8 states that have this particular program. Okay, so now, just when you thought I was done, I'm not done. Okay, so I brought my vape devices, and I'm not gonna pass them around because it's kind of a weird setup. And some of them do have nicotine in them. My Juul pods are real Juul pods. And so at the end, if you wanna come up, I'll leave it out, and then you can come up and look at it. If you're a parent, you wanna get your eyeballs on it so that you know what you're looking for, please don't hesitate to do so. Okay, so Scott blew he went and talked about the key fob. God, I gave away my punchline and everything. So what does this look like? It looks like a key fob, okay? It is a vape, okay? It acts just like a key fob. It even has, when I ordered it from the website, they even talked about how it will fit a key ring because it is created for that specifically, okay? How many of you have not seen a Juul and you're like, what is she talking about? A Juul? Okay, this is a Juul. This is a Juul. Memorize it. This is what you're looking for typically, because this is what 78% are using, okay? It comes with a charger that looks like this. It plugs into your USB. It magnets to it, and you are charging. If you're plugged into a computer, a couple weeks ago, I actually had a youth say, you know where a really good hiding place is to charge those? And I was like, tell me because I'm going to tell your parents. On the back side of a, what's the Xbox? Xbox. My kids are too little to have that yet, but an Xbox, because there is USB plugins on the back and no one's the wiser. You can plug your Juul in and it's not visible, apparently. Okay, so go home and everybody's going home and checking their Xboxes when they leave here. Okay, so that's a Juul. This is the Juul pod that has the nicotine in it. That's the 60 million of these that are produced every year. That's what this looks like. Okay, this is hazardous waste because it has nicotine in it. Okay. We also have, this is called the Novo or the Smoke or the Smock. It depends on who you ask and what youth you're talking to. Okay, I bought a green one because it's fancy. This is the Soren Air, another vaping device. What does this look like? Maybe a makeup compact or some kind of, I don't know, music device. I don't know. It doesn't look like a vaping. It doesn't look like a vaping device. Okay. What I want you to look at and realize when I'm showing you all these and holding them up is it doesn't look like what you'd expect them to look like. Okay. This is called the Soren Drop. Very popular. You refill it with a juice. And I don't have my juice out here, but juice bottles come with the little eyedroppers and stuff. So you refill it at the top. Parents, typically what you're looking for is a place to charge it and a place to inhale from. Okay? However, that was my go-to, a place to charge and a place to inhale from. But then the Puff Bar came along, and the Puff Bar does not have to charge because it's a one and done usage. So typically it says puffs up to 300 on the box. Okay, so that's what the box says. This is a Puff Bar. Okay, this was the 18 flavors that. This I just bought 2 weeks ago here in town, or a week and a half ago here in town, and I bought 2 of them and it was just under 20 bucks. Okay, it depends on where you get them though. I've talked to some other tobacco coordinators across the state and they're $12.99-ish. Okay, so I bought the pomegranate one. I'm not going to pass it around, but when you guys come up here, smell how good it smells. I want to point out how good it smells, okay? Because when we opened it at my office, I was like, can I leave it in my cubicle as an air freshener? Because I like it. Okay, it smells very, very good. And when you have something that smells very, very good, that is a flavor that you can taste, you want to taste it, right? Okay, that is marketing, and it's the Puff Bar is going to become my new Juul enemy. I have a feeling. The other Puff Bar so this is pomegranate, the pink one. So when you come up and smell it, make sure and make sure and smell it. I want you to smell how good it smells, not taste. I don't want you to know how good it tastes. I want you to know how good it smells. And then I also bought the Puff Bar flavor called OMG, because in my mind, that is total marketing to youth. OMG, okay? So I had to say, I put it out to our tobacco coordinators across the state. What do you guys think OMG stands for? Orange, mango, guava. Of course it has mango in it. That's the reason I bought it, okay? Because mango. They know what they're doing. This does not smell bad either, by the way. It smells pretty good, okay? Then we have the pen. I'm sorry, Scott.
That's okay.
Okay. Then we have the pen. This is a real pen. This is a real pen, and it writes so well that it's the kind of pen that you like, if someone's gonna borrow it, you're like, okay, I need my pen back, because it writes very well. But then when you take this cover off, it becomes a vaping device. So none the wiser, mom, dad, teachers, coaches, anyone, okay? Everyone needs to be on the lookout for these. Why? Because they come in watches, okay? So this is a vape watch. It is here in our community, okay? It looks very much like a smartwatch. You push this button and it pops off. I've passed it around a lot, so mine's broken. But oh, the time popped up on it. So it does tell time, okay? But again, you are looking for a place to charge it and a place to inhale off of. I was presenting to some parents, and parents were, I held it up, and the kid, I think he did not have a very good evening when the parents got home, because they were so mad that they're like, he has the watch. I know that's what he has. And the dad was even mad at himself because he had asked him about it, and when he showed him, the watch face was upside down. Like, he had the watch on and the face was upside down, because if you're not using it as a watch, it doesn't make a difference. And so he wasn't using it to tell time, he's using it to hide his vape. And so we've got big problems. And this is it's in our schools. We know it's in our schools. I also like to point out to parents, I talk about looking for weird chargers that you don't know what they charge. What in the world does that charge in my house? Okay, so this is the Vuse Alto. You might hear that with youth. They use the Vuse or they use the Alto. They use it because you can buy the device for 99 cents at your local gas station, okay? And they're pod systems, so you buy the pods then for about 12 bucks for 2, okay? But you get the device for 99 cents, okay? The thing that I want parents to know, because these are so highly used, is this is what the charger looks like. It's a weird looking charger, okay? When I talk about weird chargers, that Juul and this are weird. What would this charge in your house? Nothing. It doesn't charge anything. You have to have the specific device that slides into it, okay? This is what you're looking for, is weird stuff like this. That doesn't charge a phone, that doesn't charge a Kindle, that charges what exactly? It charges a device that they're using to vape, okay? Your kid wears a fanny pack a lot, gets mad at you when you want to see into the fanny pack. A flag, just like Jen was talking about, you gotta look for the flags. Irritability, they won't let you know certain things, they won't let you meet certain friends. That's all issues that should be red flags to you. 2 more items. This is a vape hoodie, okay? So it has straw-like things. You attach the vape to one end, it goes into the front pocket, handy. And then the other side you can vape off of, okay? Vape hoodies available online. And then I have the vape backpack with me as well. They don't all scream vaporware on them, okay? They don't all scream she's a Bison fan, but I bought it in green and gold because I go into schools a lot. And so if it would walk away, I want to be able to say that one is my backpack. We do have a black and silver one as well at our office to kind of show that they do come in pretty, like, you wouldn't just necessarily spot it if you weren't looking for it, but how you vape with it is right here in the handle. And you just connect your vaping device to it, zip it in there, and then you can vape right off of the shoulder all day long, okay? So they're coming out with stuff constantly, every single day. Every time we hear about a youth using a specific product, we go purchase. And then we take pictures of it and send it to our school resource officers. So last week we knew about the puff bar. We went and bought the puff bars, sent it to our school resource officers. Today I got a text message, hey, we pulled a puff bar off a kid. So that's the reason why we do it. I don't know that school resource officer would have known what he was looking for. It was blueberry, whatever, blueberry ice or whatever the flavor is. It doesn't necessarily look like a vaping device. And so we got one again. So these devices are constantly changing and constantly evolving. And you just have to be aware and constantly educate yourself on what you're looking for and what your teens are seeing. They're seeing it, so you need to see it as well. So that's all I have.
All right, so we're going to do that.
Yes.
Let's stay here and we're taking a question. I think that one's for Melissa. Jan, come on up. Shaina, Dr. Chris as well, just so we can have questions for everybody here. Yes, sir.
I'm just curious with the vaping. I mean, if someone's smoking a cigarette, there's a pretty distinct odor that's there.